So we're now
okay.
Thank
we're
goodness.
now
Not
recording. So let me yeah. So I'll get into the actual technicalities of the Zoom meeting, how the Zoom is happening, the integration is happening. But so welcome to the first business users meeting. So this is just off the bat want to say this is really a community-led thing. This is not really supposed to be just led by me, but I'm happy to have everybody should be able to come and present ideas. This is not strictly to enterprise and business, which is kind of like I'm on the enterprise side, but I know has business aspects, both for the NDN folks and his own personal stuff. And so we can talk about a lot of different business aspects of Vircadia, how to leverage it for business, how to make money in it, how to grow it. My goal is really to see this grow through enterprise use cases where I can get Fortune 500 companies to really get interested in this as a collaboration platform, and hopefully contribute back to here to make it better, and also to possibly bring some money into the ecosystem here, because obviously everybody wants to have their own builds. So there'll probably be a lot of contracting possibilities there too. But so I work for a Fortune 500 company. It'll remain nameless for now. And back in November, we had what's called actually in September, we had a hackathon. And like they called it Hack Week. And that's where I initially brought this out with this build. And the judging for the Hack Week, they really didn't even know what to make of this. They're like, they could not understand how in 1 week, we were able to get this up and running with all this content. So they just thought we were cheating or doing something weird. So then there's a follow-on in November called Skunkworks, which is a lot of the Hack Week projects that win go to Skunkworks, and it's kind of like a limited number of ideas go into there. And the goal of Skunkworks is at this company is to kind of do out-of-the-box thinking, strategic thinking, like a year to 3 years out. What are some new ideas we might want to do at the company for the products that we support? And there is one category for internal tools, and that's where I presented this, the Vircadia build for an internal tool. So I'll show you really quickly the presentation that I gave just to go over some of the use cases and the sort of the value propositions as I was presenting it to executives and other folks. And feel free to chime in as I'm giving the presentation if you have any feedback. But let me go and share my screen. Give me 1 second. To this other one. So are you guys seeing my screen? Because now that I'm sharing, it's kind of like covering up my other. Okay, so I'm going to go to present mode. All right. So it wasn't called HQ Island. It was called, the company name Island. I just removed it for now. But this was our
Stop me. I saw it before.
So let me continue sharing. Okay, do you see my screen again?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
What is HQ Island?
Yes. So the second bullet, that's where I was. One of the important feedback I got from one of the executives was about this is that this is, he wanted to understand is we've already made a pretty significant investment in a lot of different collaboration stuff like Google Docs and Zoom and SharePoint, and his concern was, is this supposed to replace all of those? And it was great feedback, and how I expressed it to him is that this is sort of an additional collaboration tool to give you an added dimension of real-time interaction, and that Zoom, SharePoint, Google Docs, all these things could be brought into the environment. And that was kind of like the demo that I was doing right here is what I did for them on Skunkworks, as you can see. Also, another advantage is Vircadia sits completely and securely behind the firewall. Unlike these third-party cloud services, Zoom, SharePoint, and Google Docs, you are literally your confidential, your restricted data is, all your meetings are going out to the cloud. Now, obviously everybody trusts the cloud now, and there's a high amount of security around it, but this is like a level better where you are completely firewalled. So I think you'd like that. The last point is really just a point I was making to people who are trying to understand this better, saying that, this is alpha software. This thing, as you just saw, it crashed, crashed on my Windows machine. It crashes on Mac a lot more often. So it's really only meant for early adopters at this point, who can do self-install and deal with crashing software. The self-install is pretty important, and I'll get to that maybe near the end as one of my learnings. So why were we doing this? Why did I bring this idea to the company? So yeah, working from home is not really for everybody, unless you've been doing it for a while. So being forced to work from home due to the COVID-19 is particularly difficult for some people, mostly people who have kids at home, and there's a lot of distractions, even for me at home. So interacting with your teams just over Zoom and email and Slack, it gets really tiring. Like they call this Zoom fatigue. It's really just like you're on Zoom and you're listening. You're half participating. You don't have your camera on. And Slack, I mean, my company is just like, it's a black hole. Like people message me, I get almost as much Slack traffic as I get email traffic. And it's even harder to manage Slack conversations. So it's all disjointed, really difficult. The third bullet. So, even though there is a vaccine, we will get out of the pandemic, but it won't be probably till about June or July next year. And that's what our company even told all the employees. So we're going to continue to work from home for another 6 months. So I saw that as a positive to, again, try to embrace these new ways of collaborating with your teammates in an environment like this. And the last part is we do every 6 months employee surveys, and we did one in January and we did one in September or July, and the survey showed that since the pandemic started, obviously, connection and collaboration were two things that just metrics that tanked. Again, just playing to the previous bullets. So again, more value as to what this can bring in solving for these problems. So just to kind of reiterate again, so what are the benefits of using this? Real-time interactions with your team, seem more like you're in the office. This platform, I mean, although it's still early and difficult to customize, but there is the opportunity here to really show your own diversity, individuality, more so than you could through a Zoom avatar or even just your Zoom background environment, So that also resonated with folks. So not only individually, but team-wise, you could set up team meetings and team rooms and decorate your environments. Third bullet is pretty important, serendipitous encounters. So how I have it running right now, I installed a single server on a 16-core, 300 gig memory. I used the dynamic threading for audio and avatar mixers and stuff. So right now it can support up to probably about 20 people fine. Haven't really gotten it up to that point yet. Hopefully I'll get to more. But I did not want this to be sort of like every team spawns their own kind of thing, spin up their own Vircadia. I wanted like one instance for the entire company to really promote this sort of serendipitous encounter thing, just like you're at the office, because the island does support multiple meetings. We could have, right now we're in this conference room and the audio is isolated to this room. So there could be another meeting in another room and we will not conflict. Or there could be somebody out in the auditorium, the atrium down below, and it could be having something as well, and it won't conflict. So I think that's pretty important, at least from a scaling standpoint. And to HAP, I'm really interested in seeing your research on how we can, and your documentation on how we can scale this, because I'm definitely going to try doing that inside my company and try to get as many people in as possible so we can test it. Last part is really, I work for a tech company, so there's a lot of developers. They should be, and we do a lot of JavaScript, so this should be an opportunity for them to really dig deep into this and really explore what could they do with Vircadia. And we're acceptable open source. So I'm hoping that we can contribute back. So it only makes sense that we could give back to this platform that we're leveraging and that we're getting kind of for free, you know. So next goals. So personally, I'm trying to get this internal community built to collaborate and contribute to the platform. So the Zoom integration features, I think they're about complete. There's still some things I have to finish now, at least since I think the only thing I haven't done is if a Zoom participant were to join meeting, excuse me, like it would be great to have these virtual world meetings where you've got somebody on a cell phone who's joining a Vircadia meeting, and it's fine through this sort of interface, and vice versa. So this basically just expands the audience participation to the 3D realm. So I hope that we could start using this in some of our other like community meetings, so then people who can't start up the client or who are mobile, you know, who still want to participate in the team meeting could do so, and participate through those other mediums. So I think that the audio is the last part that I've just worked out this morning and last night. I don't have the audio for Zoom participants set up yet, but I think that should be solvable. So authentication features. So this is a Mr. Blue item. So right now we're just on the regular Metaverse server that Mr. Blue has. So we don't really have authentication. Most of the users that are coming in right now to do meetings are just anonymous. But we want to support, you know, our intranet, our own SSO, our own OAuth. So I think ideally what I'd like to do is that federated OAuth thing that Mr. Blue had been talking about, and I would love to spin up my own Metaverse server that's just for our intranet, so our users can sign in, be authenticated, so you know the avatar who you're talking to is indeed that employee, and they can't masquerade as another employee. That was actually one of the questions I got during our expo. People were asking, well, how, you know, you can be anybody in here. How do I know that you're actually this guy and not somebody else? And so the last thing is how I could talk more to this later, how I kind of rolled this out. So I do a lot of, or I used to do a lot of Twitch streaming. So I have like a good Twitch streaming setup, and I made like a bunch of 2 to 5 minute videos, how to install, how to customize, change your avatar, you know, put up a web board, you know, do those kinds of things to get people started as fast as possible, because ramping is my like #1 goal. How to make it more seamless to get employees in. And to that last point, installing the client is, you have to do it numerous times. We're making a lot of updates all the time. So having that be painless is going to be a tough problem to solve. We also have intranet guidelines for software where most of the employee laptops are locked down. You don't have administrator access, so you have to jump through hoops just to even install this as it is right now. But I actually have a video that tells people how to get administrator access on their own machine, so they could do that. But the good news is, since this is open source, you know, our security folks can review the code and make sure that it is secure and can be certifiable to be installed on, you know, employee laptops. But I have to get it into that into that sort of process and into that deployment mechanism. I still have to figure out how to get the updates though through there. And then I just gave like a tour of the island at that point. So that was, any questions about that? And I can get into more details on Zoom next. But
well, just a comment.
Mhm.
You know, it'd be interesting if we couldn't just install Vircadia as a user app, kind of like what Google does. If a user doesn't have admin access, it just installs into their user data folder. It'd be nice if we could do something like that, and then, you know, you don't need administrator access at all. You just install it.
Well, from an intranet. Oh, go ahead, David.
What is the launcher already installs it into user data, I believe.
Sorry,
yeah, only if you're using the launcher by default.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
And the launcher also does the updates, or will be doing the updates process. It's my understanding.
Yeah, the launcher would be Yeah, that would be the right approach, I think. But Hap, I think what you're talking about is specifically Windows, and we have Mac clients as well. So and maybe it would have to be tailored to each one. I don't know if there's a launcher for Mac. If we're working on a launcher for Mac as well as a launcher for Windows. But these are things that would greatly ease adoption for you know, Fortune 500 users who might want to try to run and play with this. So yeah, something to think about how we want to approach. So let me just switch over and talk a little bit about the Zoom, and then I'll open it up to more general discussion. So in my sort of investigation and hacking of getting this working, I found kind of two modes of operation for Zoom integration in Vircadia. The first is treat this as a traditional conference room style camera and screen. So that's why I have a dedicated avatar, a dedicated machine that is basically being just like a Polycom or whatever video conferencing setup where you'd walk into a conference room, there's a camera there and a screen on the wall. You can't really change the view. I mean, you can move the camera around a little bit, but you can't share your screen easily. It's kind of like you just walk in, sit down at the desk, you talk to people on the screen, they're in another conference room, and then you get up and leave when you're done. So the pros here is, you know, if once I have this set up, like you guys just walked right in and you're now participating in a Zoom meeting, whether you know it or not. You know, you are being recorded, and we'll play back the recording so you can see. So if there are other Zoom participants, they're just connected like normal. The other thing is all the Vircadia meeting participants see the same Zoom screen. So you're all looking at the same screen. You didn't have to log into Zoom, which is what the alternate one is. I'll show you in a minute. Now the cons are from this point, you can't chat with the folks on Zoom, although that is definitely, there's an API for that. So I think that could be overcome to sort of bridge the Vircadia chat with a Zoom chat when you're in a meeting in a particular zone. And obviously, the last one is it requires right now a dedicated server to run the teleconference for a single conference room, which is not scalable. You know, so how many conference rooms? I think we have like 10 or 10 meeting spaces, I think, on the island here. So that doesn't really scale that well. But you know, with these NVIDIA cloud servers coming up, maybe you can. Maybe we can get something running and more easily set up rather than me having to jump through hoops to get this on two machines at my desk. So this is the first, and this is what we're doing right now. It's a traditional one. So the alternate is what I was playing with before, which was sort of, I call it individual or personal Zoom camera and screen, which is support basically putting a web prim, or I'm sorry, talking in Second Life terms, a web entity, and typing in the web Zoom account right there there. So basically then you sign in on your own web entity into a web Zoom session. It does require the latest, what was that? It's, actually I have it further on. It requires the latest Qt 5.15.1. But basically that gives you that means
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
Oh, that's okay. So that means then every participant gets their own sort of version of Zoom. You're still looking at the same screen, but everybody has to log in, and then you can interact with that screen. You can have access to the chat. You can share. You can even share your video, which is actually kind of freaky. You know, you're in Vircadia sharing your laptop video on a screen inside of that's displaying inside of the Vircadia. But some of the cons here is, you know, it requires some pretty funky OBS virtual camera installation. It's really only meant for people who are really, you know, who can hack around with things like what I'm doing here. That is, if you don't want to show your own presence through your laptop camera, you want to show your sort of avatar screen face, and you use OBS and start a virtual camera. But yeah, pretty much it only makes sense if you're doing this by yourself. If you're the only one, if you're in world and you want to participate in a Zoom meeting, then it actually works, and it's pretty solid. You can do it all yourself. So here's sort of like the outline of how I have it set up. Now there's much more detail. This is kind of like a work in progress. I need to add a whole lot more detail for the audio side of things, which was pretty hairy. But basically it's this first traditional style is using Kalila's screen share. So basically you have one OBS instance that's capturing the Vircadia client. So this is your remote computer rendering the conference room, which is the Zoom avatar that you see there. He's rendering the conference room that's being caught by OBS and sent into Zoom as a virtual camera. And now there is a second OBS that's capturing the Zoom screen and sending that to the screen share to display it on the screen. Now I tried doing this method last night and I was getting huge lag, like 30 seconds, 30 plus second lag on the screen. It does work. And I'm sure that, you know, as I point out here, you can either run it on the same machine or another machine for better performance. So I'm sure there's a way you can get it to work and probably be much more efficient than what I'm doing right now, which is this setup. So this is what I'm doing now, which is the WebRTC stream. So I only have one OBS, one Zoom, got Chrome started, and I'm streaming that screen, capturing the Zoom screen through the WebRTC Chrome plugin. And then I just type in that URL into the web entity. So essentially what's happening here is how many participants you're all grabbing from my local stream from my machine. So if I was resource constrained and there was like 100 people here, this obviously would not work. It won't scale. And I think Kalila covered this before. So for large meetings, large gatherings, you'd want to use the screen share. And for small meetings, you know, 5, 10 people, this works really good. As you saw, the latency was really low. And last is that individual personal Zoom that I mentioned before. So this is, you're pretty much the only participant in the Vircadia side, but you want to connect to a Zoom meeting with a bunch of other people. And you maybe want to show yourself in Zoom as your avatar. So what you do is you start the Vircadia client, you put it into selfie mode, then you capture yourself through the virtual camera and put it into the Zoom entity. Into Zoom, and then you can render the Zoom screen in a web entity. So this was the very first thing that I tried when I got Qt 5.15.1 working, and it does work. There's also, I don't know about the spectator camera in VR mode. I never tried this in VR mode, but I imagine spectator camera could also work for that. Okay, so any questions on or about this Zoom integration? Are you guys still there?
Yeah, are you gonna just got documentation maybe?
Yeah.
For...
So what I plan to do is I'll document this as a best practice. I mean, I started documenting it as these presentations as a best practice. I'll get much more detail in the coming weeks to add into here to especially, like I said, on the audio side, it's kind of crazy to get it to work right.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm going to leave since I'm not going to share anything. I'm going to leave
This
this.
This is a really big accomplishment, Dave. Really impressive stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, this took a while to figure out. But all the pieces were there, and it's just like, I think Moto was here last weekend when I tried to set it up, and it was just like crashing. My Mac client crashes left and right, and then I was having all of these Kalila streaming OBS problems before. But yeah, the WebRTC, I'm surprised, works very well, much more simple than the screen share. But I know we can get the screen share working for larger audiences. Cool. So I don't know how long the Zoom screen is gonna, I think it only goes for 40 minutes, but it's still recording. So open up for any other discussions about business uses or ideas.
I think your CIO is right that the things he outlined, hey, it needs to work with the investments we've already made, and I completely agree with that. And I think it really focuses our priorities on where does value get added. And I remember talking with High Fidelity about this when I was talking about how can I share documents, how can I have meetings and collaborate and things like that. And what I immediately had to clarify in saying that to High Fidelity is, hey, I don't think we should go down this road of trying to rebuild Google Docs, rebuild Slack, rebuild chat. Well, they do have chat, so I don't think I said that, but anyway, you get the idea. And so I think the thing that we're replacing and disrupting is the physical office, because we do want to bump into each other. You already said it, Dave. I don't have to do all those. I agree with everything you said about the reason for being in the office. So we're trying to replace that and get out of the Zoom experience, but we're not necessarily trying to replace all the tools that any enterprise has in their application suite. So all I've said is, yep, I agree with those priorities, and what we're really replacing is the office. So now how to go forward. What I'm really interested in, Dave, is your take on getting a working prototype. I have some assumptions about what will be necessary, but yeah, how do we go from what you've got, which is an amazing first leap, to something that, forgive the phrase, that is usable by ordinary people? I think that's what you were alluding to as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously going to be stages, so I can try to document as best I can to educate people how to use OBS, how to use the virtual audio wires for Windows, and I forget what the one is for Mac. It does it without making it simple right now. It's just education, but I think anybody could do it. The hardware side, having a dedicated server to render the room and be sort of like the primary point of the Zoom conference, is the part where I think is going to take a lot more work and experimentation on if we can get like a cloud-based client running with graphics and streaming out that interface will be key. So I have to do some experimentation there. And if anybody has ideas or have started experimenting with some of those cloud-based gaming servers, I think that's what they call them. Like, you just rent a machine that has a certain level of graphics processor on it and you can play games remotely. Well, that's exactly what we need here. So then script that to basically spin up one of those in that gaming cloud. And I don't know how much scripting you'd have to do around the Zoom part. There also has to be a lot of, I don't know what kind of scripting you would do, kind of like quality assurance guys do all these different types of scripting that does things on the operating system, like graphical stuff. You probably have to do that. But ideally, I'd like to get it to the point where you could spin up a conference room Zoom meeting like this. I think it's technically possible. It's just going to take a lot of work to figure out all the pieces at this point. So it'll take a little while.
It shouldn't be much effort to, for example, when we have our data stands, we get our Confluence page out, or we're going through Jira and we're looking through. I mean, for somebody to share their desktop on this environment for individuals to participate probably be a lot less work, I would think, than having multiple people all involved in a Zoom meeting. Am I making any sense there?
No, that's a good point. There's already existing ways to just share presentations without having to go through this elaborate sort of process. So there's definitely different levels of collaboration you can have. I was kind of gunning for sort of like the most deepest with the most amount of people at the same time kind of thing. But
right.
Certainly, there's other best practices. Actually, I was trying this last night. Google Docs. I could have swore, or Google Slides. I could have swore there was a feature where I could have a browser on a Google slide, give you a link to it. You bring it up on your browser. And I used to do this. We would be on a telephone, right? And I could actually control the slides, and slides would change on your machine as well if you're looking at it with the same link that I am. But I could not find that. Like, I know that was a feature. I used that back in 2010, and I researched last night and couldn't find it. Like, that would have been the ultimate. Then I could have just no streaming, no nothing, and everybody just gets a view, and I kind of remotely control your browser to go through the slides.
I'm gonna try that. I'll look for that.
Great.
That would solve a bunch of stuff. I asked, like, I was wondering that a while back, like, shouldn't we be able to see it? But then I ran into the whole, you know, we don't have the same shared view.
Yeah, I think
Well,
it's
this-
either that you have to be, everybody has to be on a Chrome browser, and Chrome relays that sort of, that session attribute, because when Google Docs first came out, it was all based on real-time collaboration. I mean, that was their big thing. I think
Yeah.
it still is, but I could not for the life of me get that to work last night. I don't know, they maybe changed it and put it into their workplace product, like they removed the feature from free feature to make it a pay feature or what.
Well, this seems like this would be useful for, you know, Zoom participants who aren't in VR and would want to be part of this conference room and, you know, and participate remotely, like you said, maybe through their phones or something like that. So there's definitely a use case for this.
I think that's the sort of fork in the road, which is, okay, we can demonstrate meetings and document sharing in World, but that's a smaller use case than what Hap just said and what Dave's demonstrated, which is if you can pull in Zoom viewers, wow, then everybody can participate, not in the same way. So Dave, the assumption I have is that we don't really get to easy use by any one or a few of us grinding through development. I'm not saying that is actually true. It's a concern I have. I mean, if it becomes true, that's awesome. Wow, now we've got something that we can really put out there and start demoing through videos and stuff like that to attract corporate clients. But so I would like to get your take on it. But the other alternative then is, well, if we can't get ourselves to sort of minimum viable product, or at least minimum viable prototype, you know, what are our options, you know, to try to present it conceptually with PowerPoint slides and attract corporate clients just through the idea that if you sign on, you know, we're going to develop this if we get enough clients. You know, I don't really want to go the VC route, as somebody else might want to. What's your take on that development roadmap to get to minimum viable product?
Yeah, it's just going to take work. And I think, as I mentioned in the slides, like early adopters, so these people who are used to things crashing, not working, you know, completely, that's going to require a lot of automation and thinking, you know, thinking out of the box to get it done. It's just a little bit too early, I think, for mass consumption, or just to the sort of broader Fortune 500 population. But to those companies who have developers who have this sort of early adopter mindset and who are, you know, a little bit knowledgeable in these streaming and audio stuff, they could do exactly what I did, you know, and the more people we can get into this platform, sort of like me, and in these other companies, the more people have contributing and driving to that goal of making it more streamlined and automated for regular mass adoption. So I think it's probably a couple of months out before I would just say, until this is sort of ready for something like that. And that would be a couple of months of concerted effort and really researching these cloud gaming services.
Yeah. Got it.
And it's something I'm actually very interested in doing. So at least you'll have one person working on it.
So the idea of having the cloud streaming game service is so that you can deliver this without having another computer. You said you had two computers that you were having to use to do this?
Yeah, exactly. So then I don't have to have a second computer, you know, at my home to do this.
So I actually have.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I actually have a little bit of practical experience regarding this. During the my last 3 months at High Fidelity, my main VR machine head was dying, right? So what I had was my old laptop, which I couldn't use, like the internal GPU, because it would crash if I did, all sorts of problems, right? So I actually signed up with Shadow PC, and I was using that directly as my work machine for like 3 months there. And in fact, I even told Philip about it at the time, you know, and it was very interesting. I think the only real issue I ran into, of course, beyond initial setup, which wasn't an issue, just you had to go through it, was that it does increase latency somewhat. So it'd be similar, I think, actually to what I'm doing right now. So when you're hearing me right now, I have a Bluetooth, a Wi-Fi headset, which is going into my one machine, which is in turn going into a virtual mixer, which is in turn being put out to my real mixer and then sent back to the mic input on my laptop. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to use the same headset for two separate machines, but it would probably be similar to what I'm doing now. So I have a little bit of extra latency, but that was the main side effect. And it worked well otherwise.
Yeah, I think for these sort of business meetings, where you probably already know this, Zoom already does have a lot of latency, and I think for business use cases, it's fine. Obviously, for sort of like music and other kinds of creative collaboration, probably it wouldn't work as well. But that's cool. I've heard of that Shadow PC, and this is one that I wanted to try signing up for and figure out. I think once we can figure out the automation, like how to spin it up, how to get the software up and running and configured with all the right stuff, and then shut it down cleanly, and do that all via script, then we'll be a lot better off.
Oh, I think the other thing worth noting is distance to the data center does play a big part. In this case, I am north of San Francisco, and I believe the data center was in somewhere in the valley.
Well, that's perfect.
But so yeah, I'm remote, but I'm not so remote that like I'm in multiple states away or anything.
Yeah, good point. So yeah, it might work out for those companies that are in Silicon Valley, but yeah, for outside of Silicon Valley, it might introduce even more latency or might not be that great. But maybe there's other providers other than Shadow PC.
Sure.
Yeah, it's only going to get better, I think, from this point.
Oh yeah, we're just scratching the surface here.
Cool. So maybe I'll. I've been thinking about an agenda for next week. So besides maybe I don't know how much time I'll get during the week to sort of keep working on this slide deck for Vircadia and build out more of the technical aspects of the audio part that I had to set up. But I don't know if anybody's taken a look at, not to say the name, but Facebook and Oculus, they have a Oculus business website. And I just looked at it last night and it was fascinating. I mean, very detailed, very marketing glitzy, use cases. It's just a lot of trying to understand how they're positioning and I don't even know what they offer besides the horizon. So I don't know if it's some sort of business horizon sort of offering, but they're offering something. Maybe it's just the headsets and it doesn't include the service. But maybe in a future meeting we can all run through that and get some ideas and think about how Vircadia can play into that kind of space with that kind of positioning. Does that sound good? And if anybody else, I think what I'll also do is I'll put up a Google Doc or a web board like on one of like the wall behind Steve or something, and so people can come in and just put things on the agenda. Whoever wants to like talk to certain things or bring up ideas, so we can. I want, like I said, I want everybody to participate. I'm happy to help organize, and I have a lot of ideas, a lot of topics, but I want to make sure everybody's use cases for just in general business cases for Vircadia can discuss and collaborate.
Sounds good. I'll definitely want to talk more about scaling and things in the cloud after the beginning of the year when I start to stand up some servers. And I'm sure that everybody's input, because everybody here has got a lot to contribute, I know. Mr. Blue had some interest in getting involved in that too. I think he's already been making some Docker containers and has a little experience with that. Not too sure if that's going to be the most viable way to spin these things up quickly, but yeah, it's worth giving it a try, see what we can do.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to how you progress on that side. So that can definitely be a topic of discussion going forward. Also, would love to get Mr. Blue in here to talk about federated OAuth and how we can run our own metaverse servers.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think you can do that now. I mean, the code base it's already there so it'd just be a matter of understanding how to install it and set it up.
But then do the clients need a special configuration to point to that metaverse server?
Yeah, I would think there'd probably be something there. David might have more of an idea what that means on the code side.
Well, today Mr. Blue said in Discord that at the moment he's working on authentication stuff for Matrix and or Federation. So still a work in progress. Best to get his, I don't think you could set it up today, but best to get his input on where he's up to and plans and things, I imagine.
I mean, but are there hard-coded paths in the interface for that reaches out to talk to the
Yes.
the server?
Yes.
Yes, there are some. Oh, hi, darling.
Hey, how are you doing? There's a couple of things you need to change on your interface in the code. You need to change the metaverse URL, and on the server, you need to change both the metaverse URL and the ICE server, default ICE server URL. But that's not that hard, and you can compile one specifically for your uses. My version of High Fidelity, I've already done that, have my own metaverse server running. Now, one of the things you can do is you can set a Windows, what is it called? You can set the metaverse URL for your interface with the
With the
my brain's
environment
gone.
variable.
The environment
Host
variable.
file?
Thank you so much. So you can set an environment variable for your metaverse URL for your interface, and that works as well. But for a company that wants to make sure that it's stable, I would definitely just build your own version with that. You can even, so if you want to run a company in here, what you can do is you can literally change the image of the loading screen and all that kind of stuff. So you have literally your own company version of this, right?
So branding.
Yeah, definitely. Well, not necessarily branding. So when they start it up, they go, oh yeah, I'm in the right version.
That's the interface client, or are you talking about Universe?
The
UI?
interface, yeah. So wouldn't be that hard to customize the interface client to make a company version of this.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we had some configurable things for the interface without having to recompile it. So in other words, if there'd be some XML file that would describe what the splash page is and where you could enter the variables for where to find the login server, those kind of things. It'd be nice if that was a configurable option.
In the interface, you could also put that in the interface JSON file. So you can actually, there is a way to put that metaverse URL into the interface JSON file. But just like environmental variables, they have to kind of know that it's there and kind of, and how to
unless we pushed it out with the install. I mean, if you're a company, you're probably going to have somebody either, pushing the software out for them or giving them a package,
Oh, definitely.
and that could already be pre-configured. That's what I'm
So-
thinking.
What I would do, right, is I would ask Kalila to make like a company branch, right? And then what we can do is set that company branch up for that particular company so that it because of the GitHub actions, we can have it build the company branch for them. And then they can have a built version of Vircadia for them, and they don't have to go through the work, every time they change something or change metaverse URL or something like that. And that might be a solution for now. I agree with you 100%. I think it should be easier to change. In my version, I made it a lot easier to change. Literally, it's just a setting in the interface that you can just throw in a new URL. But when Kalila was setting all that up, she didn't want it. She didn't want it to be used as a trolling device, so she made it a little bit more locked down in her version.
Sounds like a discussion that
It can be made. I have had this discussion with her before, and it's something we can definitely bring up again to make this a lot easier and a lot more smooth for businesses to do.
Yeah, I'd like to understand more of those use cases in terms of business branding. I mean, on some aspects it's important so that, like if you're doing what I'm doing, like running it internally, to know that you're in the right place, because there's a HQ island obviously here. Now I have one inside our intranet, so you don't want to get confused between the two, and maybe there's different clients for each, or some other sort of signaling that or branding that you're in the right place.
Most definitely.
Cool. Well, I'm going to stop the Zoom recording. We can definitely continue talking, but I'm not sure how much longer this would be able to last under the free account. I'm pretty impressed that I think we went for almost a full hour, and I thought the free Zoom was only 40 minutes. So I'm hoping that it's actually still recording and didn't cut out on me. But I'll put this recording, I'll give it to Kalila to upload to the YouTube channel or wherever she puts these videos. And yeah, maybe we can use this going forward.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah,
Are
thanks.
we meeting
Dave.
next Sunday? Same time?
Yeah. And like I said, I'll post an agenda, a board, or a Google Doc that people can put agenda items, things that they're interested in talking about. Yeah. And you can just contribute there, and we'll meet same time next week.
Marvelous. All right, team.
Cool.
We'll see y'all later.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Take it easy.
All right, stopping the Zoom.